Instead, her fing- Instead, her fingers had curled slightly, almost seeking the warmth. Was that comfort? Or something more? She sighed, rubbing her temples. The lines between what she wanted and what was real were blurring. She didn't know if she was falling for Pike, or if she was just clinging to the familiar because it was safer than facing the emptiness alone. What scared her most was the thought of losing this connection, this fragile thread that tied them together. Even if it was born from pain and uncertainty, it was something she didn't want to let go. Jordan glanced up again, catching Pike's eyes meeting hers. In that moment, she saw all the things he wasn't saying, the struggles, the loneliness, the hope buried beneath it all. And something inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, what she felt was real. But she wasn't ready to admit it out loud. Not yet. For now, Jordan would hold on to the confusion, the uncertainty, the quiet longing. She would watch Pike, see the pain behind his eyes, and wonder if they could find a way to heal together, or if this was just a momentary shelter before the storm. The world outside was swallowed by darkness. The power outage had rendered the entire town silent, streetlights extinguished, houses darkened like abandoned shells. Inside her small apartment, Claire sat by the window, the faint glow of her phone screen the only source of light. The silence was thick, punctuated only by distant, muted sounds of a generator humming somewhere down the block. She checked the time. 9:15. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lucas. "I'm leaving now. See you soon." She had insisted he come pick her up for the weekend. Her parents' house was a 3-hour drive away, and with no power, her apartment felt too suffocating. Outside, the rain began to drizzle, a soft patter that promised a longer, slower journey. Claire grabbed her coat and headed out, the cold air a sharp contrast to the warmth inside. Lucas was already waiting by the car, the overhead street lamp flickering as if struggling to stay alive. He looked up as she approached, offering a small smile. "Ready?" he asked. "Yeah," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. The drive was quiet at first. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the steady rhythm of rain against the windshield. They didn't usually travel together. This weekend was a rare exception, born out of necessity and the shared discomfort of a powerless city. About an hour in, the rain intensified and the winding road narrowed. Claire tensed, gripping the edge of the seat. Lucas glanced at her. "You okay?" "Yeah," she said, forcing a smile. "Just nervous about the road." He nodded, slowing down. The dim glow of the dashboard lights cast soft shadows across his face, making his usually sharp features appear softer, almost vulnerable. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just filled with something unspoken, a tension hanging between them, charged and electric. As Lucas took a sharp turn, Claire instinctively reached out to steady herself. Her hand brushed against his arm, light, accidental. The contact lingered just a fraction too long before they both pulled back, startled by the sudden intimacy. Lucas cleared his throat. "Sorry." "No, it's okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. They exchanged a glance, a look that said more than words ever could. Neither wanted to cross the line, but the closeness was undeniable. The world outside was stormy and unpredictable, and somehow that made the space between them feel fragile, charged. A crack of thunder startled them both. Claire looked out the window, blinking away the sudden rush of adrenaline. Lucas turned toward her, voice softer now. It's weird, isn't it? How something so simple, like a touch or a look, can feel like the most dangerous thing. Claire nodded, her heart racing. Yeah, like standing on the edge of something we shouldn't fall into. They both knew the history. Years of friendship, unspoken feelings, carefully buried beneath layers of familiarity and restraint. Neither wanted to ruin what they had, but the storm outside seemed to have loosened their boundaries, even if only for a moment. The rest of the drive passed in a blur of stolen glances and careful distance, the accidental intimacy hanging over them like a fragile secret. When they finally arrived at her parents' house, the lights flickered back on, as if signaling a return to normalcy. Lucas helped her out of the car, his hand briefly brushing her back in a gesture that was both protective and hesitant. Thanks for coming, Claire said softly. Anytime, he replied, their eyes meeting in a quiet understanding. As she stepped inside, the storm outside began to subside, but the tension between them remained, unresolved, dangerous, and quietly electric. Neither crossed the line. But sometimes, the most powerful moments happen in the spaces just before. The cafe was nearly empty by the time they sat there, 2 coffee cups growing cold between them. Outside, the rain drummed softly against the windows, casting a grey blur over the city streets. Inside, the air felt electric, thick with everything unsaid. Lena stirred her cappuccino absent-mindedly, eyes flicking up to meet James's across the table. His usual easy smile was gone, replaced by something raw, like he was holding back a secret. Do you ever think about what this could be? James finally asked, voice low enough that only she could hear. His fingers tapped nervously against the rim of his mug. Lena's breath hitched. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, imagined the words, the touch, the way his eyes might search hers for an answer. But now, reality was far more intense, tighter in her chest. What do you mean? She whispered. James's gaze dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second, then back up. Us. Here. Like, more than friends. His voice cracked, revealing a vulnerability she hadn't expected. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the distant sound of rain. She wanted to reach out, to bridge the space between them, but her hands felt frozen, caught between hope and fear. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched, full of all the things they both wanted, but were too afraid to say. James leaned forward just slightly, the movement almost imperceptible. His eyes searched hers, waiting, pleading. The air between them thickened, charged like a storm about to break. Lena's breath hitched again, and she felt it. The magnetic pull, the unspoken promise that hung just out of reach. Time slowed. Her world narrowed to the curve of his jaw, the way his eyelashes brushed against his skin as he blinked. He moved closer, his hand hovering over hers. Her pulse raced, a chaotic drumbeat echoing the thundering rain outside. His breath mingled with hers, warm and intoxicating. And then he stopped. The moment shattered as he pulled back just enough to avoid the inevitable, his eyes dropping to the table. Ashamed. I shouldn't, he began, voice tight. Lena shook her head, bitter sweetness curling in her chest. Why not? James swallowed hard, words tangled in his throat. Because everything could change, and maybe it's better if we don't. Her heart clenched, but she nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. The risk was too great. The fear of losing what they had eclipsed the hope of what could be. Yet beneath the pain, a flicker of something else. Promise, perhaps. A fragile hope that this wasn't the end. They sat in silence again, the storm outside easing into a gentle drizzle. The world was unchanged, but between them something had shifted. An invisible line crossed, a secret shared in a glance. Lena reached out at last, fingertips brushing against James's hand, tentative but real. He squeezed gently, and in that simple touch, they both knew. This was only the beginning. Jordan had never been one to attract much attention. She lived quietly in a small town where everyone knew each other's business. But somehow, she had managed to stay under the radar for years. That all changed recently. A whisper here, a pointed look there. The kind of subtle shifts that soon spiraled into full-blown gossip. It started innocently enough. Jordan had been spending a lot of time with Pike, her longtime friend, who had recently become more than that. They were careful, but people noticed. Noticing turned into talking, and talking soon became judgment. At the grocery store, Jordan overheard a mother quietly warning her child. That's Jordan. Don't get involved with her kind. The sting of those words lingered long after she left the aisle. Her phone buzzed constantly with cryptic messages from friends she barely recognized anymore. One afternoon, her closest friend, Carla, pulled her aside with a serious look. Jordan, I'm only telling you this because I care. People are talking. I heard from my cousin that some of what they're saying isn't just about you and Pike. There are rumors, and they're nasty. Jordan's heart sank. Rumors? What kind? Carla looked around nervously, lowering her voice. Some people say Pike's family doesn't approve of you. Others are saying you're using him for his connections. I don't know if it's true, but you should be careful. It's getting ugly. The warning felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. She had always trusted Carla, but now she wondered if the warning was meant to protect or to push her away. Either way, the community's judgment felt suffocating. At school and in town, eyes followed her. Whispers circled like vultures waiting to pick apart any sign of weakness. Jordan tried to hold her head high, but inside, she felt smaller and smaller. Pike, too, was changing. He grew distant, more reserved. He stopped texting as often, his usual warmth replaced by a guarded coolness. When Jordan asked him why, he brushed it off with a vague excuse about being busy. One evening, Jordan confronted him quietly. Pike, what's going on? You're pulling away. Is it because of all this gossip? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's not easy, Jordan. I'm trying to protect you. And myself. The more people talk, the harder it gets for both of us. I don't want to be the reason you get hurt, but I'm already hurting. Jordan whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I need you now, more than ever. Pulling away only makes it worse. Pike looked torn, caught between his desire to shield her and his fear of being caught in the crossfire. I don't know if I can handle all this, he admitted. Maybe if I keep my distance, the gossip will fade. Maybe that will give you some peace. Jordan shook her head. Distance won't fix this. We have to face it together. I'm tired of running from judgment and whispers. I want to stand with you, not behind you. For the first time in days, Pike reached out, taking her hand in his. Okay, together then. But we need to be strong. The town might keep whispering, and the gossip might never stop. But Jordan knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't let external pressure break her. Not while Pike was willing to stand by her side, even through the judgment and the whispers. The room was thick with silence, heavy enough to suffocate. Emma stood by the window, the fading light casting long shadows across her face, but she didn't look outside. Instead, her eyes were fixed on the door behind her, waiting for Jake to come in. When he finally did, his steps echoed with a mixture of anger and exhaustion, like he was carrying all the weight they'd been avoiding for months. "Why did you come back?" Emma's voice was sharp, but her hands trembled at her sides. Jake closed the door quietly, as if trying to keep the storm outside from spilling in. "We need to talk. No more pretending." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "Pretending? You mean like all this time? Like everything's fine between us?" "Nothing's fine, Emma." Jake's voice cracked, the anger barely masking the hurt. "I've been trying to ignore it, trying to convince myself it's nothing, but it's tearing me apart." Her breath hitched, a fragile shield breaking. "So what? We just fight now, because you can't handle it anymore?" "No," he said, stepping closer. "We don't fight because I can't handle it. We fight because we have to. Because pretending doesn't erase what's between us. It never did." Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her chest tightening. "I thought if we ignored it, if we stayed quiet, maybe it would go away. Maybe you'd forget about that night, about us." Jake's fists clenched, and for a moment he looked lost. "I haven't forgotten. How could I? Every time I see you, every time I hear your voice, it's like a knife twisting inside me. I'm breaking, Emma." Her voice softened, trembling with a vulnerability she rarely showed. "I'm breaking too." They stood there, the distance between them shrinking with every heartbeat, the years of silence and unspoken words pressing down on them. "Why didn't you say anything?" Jake asked, the frustration mixing with desperation. "Why did you push me away when I was trying to reach you?" Emma swallowed hard. "Because I was scared. Scared of what it meant if I let you in. Scared that if I stopped pretending, I'd lose you forever." Jake's expression softened, but the pain was still there. "You don't have to be scared anymore. I'm here." Her voice barely a whisper now. "But what if it's too late?" "It's never too late, Emma." He reached out, his hand trembling as it brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "We don't have to pretend anymore. Not with each other." For the first time in months, the walls they'd built began to crumble. The weight of everything unsaid, every glance avoided, every touch withheld, was breaking apart in the rawness of this moment. Emma looked up, meeting his eyes, searching for the truth in their depths. "So what now?" Jake took a shaky breath. "Now we face it. Together. No more running, no more hiding. We fight. Not to tear each other down, but to build something real." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks as she nodded, her voice breaking. "Together?" The silence returned, but it was different now. It was a fragile peace, a quiet understanding forged in the fire of their breaking point. And maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something new. One of them finally says it. "I feel something I shouldn't." The words hang in the air, fragile and raw, trembling between them like a secret shared for the first time. The other doesn't speak for a moment, just looks at them, eyes searching, wide and uncertain. Then quietly, "I've felt it too." They sit together on the faded bench beneath the old oak tree, its sprawling branches sheltering them in a private world of dappled sunlight and whispering leaves. The park is nearly empty this late in the afternoon, save for a few distant joggers and the occasional chirp of a bird. It feels like the world has folded away just for this moment, letting time slow to a crawl. "I never wanted to say it," the first one confesses, voice barely above a whisper. "I thought if I ignored it long enough, it would just disappear. But it doesn't." The second nods slowly, biting their lip as if to stop the flood of feelings from spilling out. "Me too. I told myself it was just a passing thought. But it's not. It's been growing inside me. They're so close, and yet the space between them feels vast. Not just the few inches separating their shoulders, but the uncertainty, the fear of what might happen if this truth is spoken aloud. What if it ruins everything? What if it changes them?" "Why now?" the first asks. "Why did you finally say it?" "Because I can't keep pretending anymore," the second says. "Every time I see you, it's like this ache I can't ignore. I wanted to be brave, but I wasn't. I'm still scared. But I want you to know." The confession, once so terrifying, begins to feel like a fragile bridge between them, a path forward through the confusion and doubt. The first one takes a deep breath, steadying their racing heart. "I'm scared too. Scared it means losing what we have, or not being the people we thought we were. But maybe it also means something new, something better." They reach out slowly, hesitantly, hands trembling as they brush fingers together. It's a small gesture, but it sends a spark through the silence, an unspoken promise of trust and hope. "Do you think it's real?" the second asks, voice shaky. "Or just a fantasy we're afraid to let go of?" The first shakes their head. "It's real. I don't want to pretend anymore. I want to see where this goes, even if it's scary." A small smile breaks through the tension. "Me too." They lean closer, sharing a moment charged with everything unsaid, the years of friendship, the laughter, the quiet moments, the stolen glances. It's as if they're both holding their breath, waiting to see what comes next. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the grass, but they barely notice. The world has shrunk to this bench, to these words, to this fragile new beginning. "Whatever happens," the first whispers, "we'll face it together?" "Together," the second agrees, squeezing their hand gently. For the first time in a long time, the weight inside them feels lighter. The fear still lingers, but so does something else, a quiet hope, growing stronger with every heartbeat. They stood at the edge of the ruined city, the ash-grey skyline fractured by skeletal buildings, a ghostly reminder of the world that had once been. The air was thick with dust and silence, broken only by the distant crackle of fires still burning in the distance. Mara's fingers clenched tightly around Eli's, grounding them both amid the uncertainty. "We don't have to do this," Mara said softly, eyes searching Eli's face. "We could just walk away, start over somewhere safe. We've done that before." Eli swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Safe is a lie now. Out there." He gestured toward the wasteland beyond the city. "Out there, people have forgotten what safety means. But here, we might have a chance. If we can get into the old government vault, the one on the north side, there's supplies, maybe something that could help us. And others." Mara shook her head. "You heard the others? The townsfolk? The survivors in the camps? None of them believe it's worth the risk. They say the vault is trapped, cursed, maybe guarded by whoever caused the war in the first place. They say it's better to leave the past buried." Eli looked down, the weight of their options pressing heavily on his shoulders. "But if we don't try, then all this," he said, gesturing at the desolation behind them, "then everything we've lost means nothing. If we stay silent, if we walk away now, who else will?" Mara bit her lip, memories flickering through her mind. Friends lost to desperation, the growing hunger in the camps, the stories of a cure or a resource in the vault that could change everything. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if it's a trap? What if it's worse than anything we've faced?" Eli stepped closer, eyes steady. "I'm scared too. But we have each other. And if we don't take the risk now, then what are we holding on for?" They had been through hell together, before the world burned, before governments fell and communities scattered like ashes on the wind. They had survived betrayals, starvation, and the cruelest loneliness. Now, standing on the brink of the unknown, it was not the fear of the vault or the warnings of the others that held them back, but the fear of losing each other. Mara nodded slowly, squeezing his hand. "Then we do it. Together." That night, under a sky smeared with ash clouds and cold stars, they made their way into the ruins. The city was a labyrinth of crumbling concrete and twisted steel, shadows playing tricks on their minds. Every step echoed with the ghosts of the past, every breath a reminder of what was lost. As they approached the vault's heavy doors, the warnings of others rang in Mara's ears. She could feel the tension knotting in her chest. "If this goes wrong," she whispered. Eli's grip tightened. "Then at least we faced it. Together." With a final deep breath, they pushed open the vault's rusted gates. Inside, the stale air was thick, but the rows of untouched supplies, medical kits, and clean water glinted like a promise. And in the corner, an old terminal flickered weakly, still alive after all these years. Mara exhaled, tears pricking her eyes. "We found it." Eli smiled, the first real one in months. Now the real work begins. Outside, the wind howled through the broken city. Others might call them foolish, reckless. They might say it was safer to walk away, to forget. But Mara and Eli had made their choice. They would risk everything, not just for survival, but for hope. Because in the fallout of the old world, sometimes hope was the most dangerous thing of all. The late afternoon sun filtered softly through the half-open window, casting a warm glow on the worn wooden floorboards of the small apartment. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual restless energy. Cars honking, distant laughter, the faint hum of a street musician's guitar. But inside, time seemed to slow, wrapping itself around the two figures sitting close on the threadbare couch. Lena glanced at Mark, her heart thudding in a way that wasn't just nervous anymore. It was steady, calm, and full, like it finally knew where it belonged. Their journey had been long and tangled, riddled with doubts and stolen moments. But here they were, together. "I'm tired of hiding," Mark said quietly, breaking the silence. His eyes held the kind of honesty that made Lena's breath catch. "Not just from everyone else, from myself. I've spent so much time pretending this isn't what I want, pretending that it's easier to keep it secret." Lena reached out, her fingers brushing his. "Me too," she whispered. "I thought if I said it out loud, it would all fall apart. But maybe the real risk is never saying it at all." They sat like that for a moment, the quiet hum of the city outside punctuating the stillness between them. Then Mark smiled, a small, shy smile that tugged at the corners of his mouth and reached all the way to his eyes. So, what now? He asked. Do we tell them? Or keep this just for us a little longer? Lena thought for a moment, weighing the fear of exposure against the freedom that came with truth. I don't know if the world is ready for us yet, she admitted. But I know I'm ready for you. That's what matters. We can take it one step at a time. Together. Mark nodded, the weight on his shoulders visibly lifting. One step at a time. I like that. Her hand found his again, this time holding tighter. No more pretending, no more shadows. Whatever happens next, we face it as us. He pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. Earned love, he murmured. That's what this is, right? Not the easy kind. The kind you fight for, the kind that makes you stronger. Lena smiled, a tear slipping free down her cheek, not from sadness, but from a deep well of relief and joy. Yes, the kind that makes us whole. For the first time in a long time, they didn't feel afraid. They felt ready, ready to meet the world with open hearts, ready to claim the love that had quietly grown between them, resilient and true. The room around them was small, and the city outside was chaotic, but inside this moment, everything was perfect. They didn't need grand gestures or loud declarations, just the steady beat of their hearts, sinking in a rhythm that promised a new beginning. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold, Lena and Mark stayed wrapped in each other's arms, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it together, openly, honestly, and without fear. This was more than just a decision. It was a promise that no matter what, they would choose each other, again and again. She broke up with his son, but now she's living under his roof. When attraction turns forbidden, how far will they go before everything falls apart? Fingers had curled slightly, almost seeking the warmth. Forbidden and undeniable start to blur. Jordan never expected that moving in with Pike Lawson would ignite a secret. When your ex's father becomes the only person you can turn to, what happens when the lines between tea she wasn't ready to face? One that could change everything. Jordan was only 19, but already life had tested her in ways most people wouldn't expect at such a young age. On the outside, she carried herself with a quiet confidence, a strong, steady presence that made people believe she had it all figured out. But beneath that exterior, she was grappling with the kind of uncertainty that could shake even the toughest of souls. Her recent breakup had left a jagged hole in her world. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the collapse of a future she had begun to imagine. A future that suddenly seemed impossible to reach. For months, Jordan had leaned on her boyfriend more than she realized. Now, with the echoes of their final conversation still ringing in her ears, she found herself standing alone in an empty apartment that no longer felt like home. Independence had always been something Jordan valued. Growing up, she had learned early on to rely on herself. Her parents were supportive but distant, often caught up in their own lives. She had carved out her own space in the world by sheer determination, working part-time jobs, managing her studies, and dreaming of a life where she could make her mark. But independence was a double-edged sword. While it gave her strength, it also made her feel isolated. There were moments when she longed for someone to lean on, someone who could understand the battles she fought daily. The breakup didn't just leave her heart bruised, it left her with nowhere to go. The apartment she shared with her ex was now off limits, and her parents' home was too far away, emotionally and geographically. Friends offered sympathy, but had their own lives to live, their own struggles to manage. Jordan felt like she was drifting, untethered in a sea of uncertainty. Yet despite everything, she refused to let despair define her. There was a fire inside Jordan, a stubborn refusal to give up, even when the nights felt long and the future seemed bleak. She had dreams, after all, dreams that went beyond heartbreak and hardship. She wanted to study, to travel, to create something meaningful. These ambitions kept her moving forward, even when every step felt like a struggle. Her strength wasn't loud or boastful. It was quiet resilience, the kind that showed in the small things, getting up each morning, searching for a new job, applying for scholarships, and reaching out for help even when it felt uncomfortable. She knew she couldn't do it all alone, and part of her was learning to accept that. Vulnerability, she realized, wasn't weakness. It was a doorway to connection, to healing. Jordan's story was still unfolding, a tapestry of hope woven with threads of pain and perseverance. She was a young woman on the edge of transformation, caught between the comfort of what she knew and the daunting promise of what could be. Every setback was a lesson, every tear a step toward understanding herself better. In her heart, Jordan was searching, not just for a place to stay, but for a sense of belonging, not just for a new relationship, but for a renewed sense of purpose. And in that search, she was discovering something precious: the courage to face her fears, the strength to stand on her own, and the quiet power of hope. This was Jordan, strong but struggling, independent yet vulnerable, lost but unbroken. A heroine not because she was perfect, but because she kept fighting when everything told her to give up. Pike is a 38-year-old man who carries the quiet weight of experience and solitude. He is the father of his ex-girlfriend's child, a role he embraces with a sense of responsibility, even if it often goes unnoticed by the outside world. Life has shaped him into a calm, private, and hard-working individual, a man who prefers to keep his emotions closely guarded behind a steady, unflinching gaze. Physically, Pike is unassuming. His lean frame and slightly weathered face speak of long days spent working with his hands, often outdoors. His dark hair is peppered with early streaks of grey, giving him a distinguished air that contrasts with his otherwise modest demeanor. His eyes, a deep hazel, rarely betray the storm of feelings beneath his surface. To most people, he appears distant, almost untouchable. But those who know him well understand that his silence is not emptiness. It is carefully measured restraint. Pike lives alone in a small, modest home on the outskirts of town. The house is simple but well kept, reflecting his methodical nature. Everything has its place, from the worn leather armchair by the fireplace to the old wooden workbench in the garage, where he spends countless hours fixing things or creating small projects to keep his mind occupied. The solitude suits him. It's a space where he can breathe without the burden of expectations or judgments. His calm demeanor hides a deeply emotional core, one shaped by a complicated past. Pike's relationship with his ex-girlfriend was intense, but ultimately fractured by circumstances neither could fully control. Despite their separation, Pike's commitment to his child remains unwavering. He may not be the loud, demonstrative father type, but he is present in all the quiet ways that matter, showing up when needed, providing support, and protecting his family from afar. Emotionally, Pike is guarded. Trust does not come easily to him, a product of past betrayals and disappointments that left their mark on his heart. He has learned to protect himself by keeping others at arm's length, revealing only fragments of who he truly is. This emotional armor sometimes causes misunderstandings, leading others to see him as cold or indifferent when, in reality, he is simply cautious. Beneath that armor lies a man capable of great love and loyalty, waiting for the rare few he deems worthy of his trust. Hard work is a defining trait of Pike's character. From a young age, he learned the value of dedication and perseverance. Whether it's his day job as a skilled craftsman or the countless small chores that keep his life in order, Pike approaches every task with diligence and pride. His hands, calloused and steady, tell stories of long hours and unwavering commitment. Work is not just a means to an end for him. It is a way to maintain control and purpose in a world that often feels unpredictable. Pike's privacy is sacred to him. He does not seek the spotlight or crave social attention. Instead, he values the simple routines and quiet moments that give his life meaning. A solitary walk through the nearby woods, the gentle hum of an old radio, a cup of black coffee on a rainy morning. These small rituals ground him, offering peace amidst the chaos of life. Despite his reserved nature, Pike is far from indifferent to the people around him. He has a quiet strength that others find reassuring, a dependable presence when the world feels uncertain. Friends and family know they can count on him in times of crisis, even if he rarely offers words of comfort. His actions speak louder than any speech could, revealing a man who lives by integrity and quiet courage. In many ways, Pike is a hero, not because of grand gestures or dramatic feats, but because of his steady, unwavering presence in the lives he touches. He is a reminder that strength often lies in silence, that love can be shown through actions rather than words, and that sometimes the greatest battles are fought quietly, within the heart. Jordan stood on the threshold of Pike's apartment, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and a cautious hope tucked beneath his ribs. It wasn't how he wanted things to go. Moving in with Pike was necessity, not choice. The two of them had a complicated history, riddled with half-spoken words and unspoken grudges. But now, with Jordan's lease ending abruptly and nowhere else to go, they'd come to an agreement. This was temporary. Pike didn't seem thrilled, but he wasn't opposed either. They were adults. They'd made it clear. Rules first, feelings later. "All right," Pike said, setting his keys down on the kitchen counter and rubbing his hands together like he was ready to negotiate terms in a boardroom. "Let's get this out of the way." Jordan nodded, dumping his bag on the couch. "Rules? Boundaries? I get it." Pike pulled out a small notebook and flipped it open. "Number 1, no guests, at least not without a heads up. I don't want random people wandering in." "Fine." Jordan crossed his arms, bracing for the next item. "Number 2, you keep your stuff in your room. Common areas stay clear." "This isn't a storage unit." Jordan smirked. "Since when have I been a slob?" "Since your last visit. You left half your clothes on the floor." Jordan laughed, the tension easing for a moment. "Fair. Number 3, quiet hours. I work early, so no loud music or yelling past 10 p.m. Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you care about noise?" since I got tired of your midnight karaoke sessions." They shared a brief, reluctant grin before Pike got serious again. "Number 4. We keep this strictly platonic. No mixing feelings, no drama." Jordan's stomach tightened. "Agreed." "Good," Pike said, closing the notebook. "We stick to these, and maybe this will be easier than I thought." Jordan set the rules in his mind like armor. He couldn't afford to fall into old patterns. Not now. That first night, the apartment felt unfamiliar with 2 people occupying it. Jordan stayed in his room most of the evening, unpacking quietly while Pike busied himself in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. The silence was thick, but not uncomfortable. "So," Pike said without looking up, "how long do you think this will last?" Jordan shrugged. "Until I get back on my feet." "Maybe a month?" 2 question mark. Pike nodded. "I'll hold you to that." They ate dinner at the small table, careful not to touch more than necessary, each lost in thought. Later, Jordan stood in front of the bathroom mirror brushing his teeth when he heard Pike's door open down the hall. The sound was normal, a reminder they were sharing space, living parallel lives. It wasn't easy. Old arguments bubbled just beneath the surface, but every time Jordan felt the pull of frustration or nostalgia, he reminded himself, this was temporary. Over the next few days, they found a rhythm. Jordan left early for job interviews. Pike disappeared into his work. Sometimes they crossed paths in the kitchen, exchanging a nod or a quick comment about the weather. The boundaries held firm, the rules like guardrails steering them clear of the pitfalls that had almost destroyed their connection before. But one evening, as Jordan sat on the couch, scrolling through job listings, Pike came over with 2 beers. "Here," he said, tossing one to Jordan. "For the hell of it. No strings." Jordan caught it and smiled, feeling a little lighter. Maybe temporary wasn't so bad. "Cheers to rules and boundaries," Jordan said, clinking the bottle against Pike's. "Yeah," Pike said, "and to making it through without losing our minds." They laughed, and for the first time since the move-in, the apartment felt a little more like home. The clink of cutlery on porcelain was the loudest sound in the room, cutting through the silence like a knife. They sat across from each other, 2 strangers bound by circumstance rather than choice, the air between them thick with unspoken words. The restaurant's soft lighting cast gentle shadows across the table, but it couldn't soften the sharp edge of discomfort that hung over the meal. She stared down at her plate, tracing the rim absent-mindedly, pretending the world beyond the plate was far more interesting than the man sitting just a few feet away. He shifted in his seat, hands folded awkwardly in his lap, eyes flickering up to meet hers, before darting away like a startled bird. Neither dared to break the silence first. She stared down at her plate, tracing the rim absent-mindedly, pretending the world beyond the plate was far more interesting than the man sitting just a few feet away. He shifted in his seat, hands folded awkwardly in his lap, eyes flickering up to meet hers before darting away like a startled bird. Neither dared to break the silence first. "So, how's work been?" he asked, his tone forced, overly casual. A question like a brittle twig, easily broken. She glanced up, surprised by the question. "Busy?" she replied shortly, then looked back down, avoiding any follow-up. The answer was true, but also a convenient shield, keeping the conversation shallow, safe. He nodded, chewing on the inside of his cheek. Same here. Deadlines, meetings, the usual grind. His words fell flat, hollow echoes bouncing off the walls of their mutual discomfort. The waiter approached, asking if they wanted more wine. They both declined with quick, almost simultaneous shakes of the head. The moment the server stepped away, the quiet returned, heavier and more oppressive than before. She picked up her fork, hesitating before stabbing a piece of salad, chewing methodically as if the rhythm could drown out the tension. He took a sip of water, eyes fixed on the ripples in his glass, as if studying the reflections would provide some clarity. Neither of them knew what they wanted to say or how to say it. It was easier to pretend the other wasn't there. Easier to focus on the mundane than to confront the growing awareness that simmered beneath their polite distance. The table felt smaller, the space between them charged with invisible electricity. Every glance, every breath, every pause was a reminder of the unspoken history, the things left unsaid. It was a quiet battle of wills, neither willing to break the fragile truce of civility, yet both aching to bridge the gap. He cleared his throat, trying again. "Did you see that new movie? The one with the guy who was in that other film?" She blinked, momentarily distracted from the oppressive quiet. "No, not yet. Heard it's good, though." Her tone was neutral, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of interest, or was it curiosity? He shrugged, sensing the shift, but unsure how to follow it. "Yeah, maybe. Maybe we could watch it sometime." The words hung awkwardly, tentative and uncertain. She considered replying, but didn't. Instead, she offered a small, tentative smile, an olive branch in a battlefield of silence. The moment passed, swallowed again by the quiet that settled over the table. Their plates were nearly empty now, the food untouched in some places, a reflection of the distance that neither had managed to close. As the meal drew to a close, the waiter returned with the check. He pulled out his wallet, ready to pay, but she reached for it at the same time. Their hands brushed, a fleeting spark of contact that startled them both. "Let me," he said quickly, voice a little firmer, as if grasping at something real amidst the haze of awkwardness. "No, I insist," she replied, eyes locking with his for a brief second before looking away. They settled into a quiet stalemate, the tension lingering even as they gathered their things to leave. Outside, the night air was cool and clear, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. They walked side by side, silence still between them, but somehow the weight felt lighter. The first step had been taken, not with grand gestures or heartfelt confessions, but with quiet acknowledgement and the fragile hope that maybe this awkward beginning was something worth exploring. Intimacy is often thought of as grand gestures, romantic getaways, heartfelt declarations, or milestone celebrations. Yet the foundation of deep connection is laid quietly in the small, seemingly ordinary moments shared between people. A shared joke, helping each other cook dinner, or curling up for a late-night movie together. These tiny instances weave the fabric of closeness over time. Consider a shared joke. It's more than just laughter. It's a private language, a bond formed through understanding and timing. When two people laugh at the same punchline, they're signaling that they see the world in a similar way, even if just for a fleeting second. This inside humor becomes a thread of familiarity that draws them closer. It's an unspoken invitation to belong, to feel known and appreciated. A joke shared between friends or partners becomes a small but powerful symbol of togetherness. Similarly, helping each other cook is a simple act that fosters connection in a tangible way. It's a collaborative moment where focus shifts from the outside world to the shared task at hand. Whether chopping vegetables side by side or tasting the sauce and suggesting a pinch more salt, cooking together encourages communication, cooperation, and mutual care. The kitchen, often called the heart of the home, becomes a stage for subtle acts of intimacy. Hands brush, eyes meet, and smiles exchange meaning beyond words. These actions say, "I want to make this moment better for both of us," and in doing so, deepen the bond. Then there are late-night movies. Those quiet, unhurried evenings where the world outside feels distant. Sitting together on the couch, sometimes sharing popcorn, sometimes just leaning into one another's presence, creates a space where physical closeness and emotional comfort intersect. The act of simply being there for each other without pressure or expectation is a form of intimacy in itself. It's in these moments that trust quietly grows. Trust that you don't need constant words or grand actions to feel close, that presence alone is enough. These small moments accumulate, layer upon layer, building intimacy like bricks in a wall. They become a shared history, a bank of memories that people can draw on when life gets difficult. During hard times, these simple connections remind us that we are not alone. They are the quiet anchors in the ebb and flow of relationships. Intimacy born from these everyday moments is also sustainable. Grand gestures can feel overwhelming or infrequent, but small, consistent acts of connection nurture relationships steadily. They are achievable and repeatable, creating ongoing opportunities to connect. Over time, these moments can foster deeper emotional safety, encouraging people to share their fears, dreams, and vulnerabilities. Moreover, these small moments emphasize presence, the act of truly being with another person. In our busy, distracted lives, genuine presence can feel rare and precious. When someone listens attentively to a joke, shares a task in the kitchen, or simply sits beside us during a movie, they are offering something invaluable, their time and attention. That act alone says, "You matter to me." The beauty of these moments is that they are accessible to everyone. You don't need special plans or expensive gifts to build intimacy. Instead, it's about noticing and appreciating the little things. The way someone's eyes light up when they laugh, the comfortable silence while cooking side by side, or the warmth of a hand held during a quiet film. These experiences create a shared emotional landscape, a gentle but profound connection that sustains relationships. In the end, intimacy is not always loud or obvious. It often lives in the quiet corners of daily life, in moments that might seem too small to matter, but, in reality, mean everything. A shared joke, helping each other cook, a late-night movie. These are the moments where hearts meet and relationships deepen. They remind us that connection is built not just by what we do, but by simply being together. Jordan had kept it quiet for a while, but the secret was out. She was living with Pike's dad, and Pike's ex-boyfriend, Nate, had just found out. It started one ordinary afternoon when Jordan stepped out of the house to grab some groceries. She hadn't expected Nate to be there, standing awkwardly by the mailbox. His eyes immediately locked onto her. surprise and something like disbelief washing over his face. "Jordan," Nate said, voice tight. "What are you doing here?" Jordan's heart skipped. She forced a smile. "Hey, Nate. I live here now." Nate's gaze flicked to the house behind her, the familiar red brick home Pike had grown up in. The house she had moved into a few weeks ago after her own apartment lease ended. Nate's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "With Pike's dad?" "Yeah," Jordan replied softly. "It's been complicated, but it's the best option I have right now." Nate's eyes darkened. "You know Pike doesn't like this." Jordan's stomach tightened. She'd heard the stories. Pike wasn't thrilled about her staying here, not with his family so close. And the added drama of Nate himself showing up was making things worse. "Look," Jordan said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm not here to cause trouble." Nate shook his head. "It's not about you causing trouble. It's about respect. Pike's dad is family, and Pike, he's still hurt from everything that happened between us. Now you're just here." Jordan bit her lip. The words stung more than she expected. She'd never intended to step on anyone's toes. She just needed a place to stay, and Pike's dad, Mr. Thompson, had offered. Behind the screen door, she heard a soft clearing of a throat. Pike's dad, an older man with kind eyes and a cautious expression, stepped outside. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Nate turned to Pike's dad, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I'm just trying to figure out why Jordan's living in your house. Doesn't this make things awkward for Pike?" Mr. Thompson sighed deeply. "Jordan's been through a rough patch. We thought helping her out would be the right thing to do. Pike knows." "Does he?" Nate's voice was sharper now. "Because last time I talked to him, he sounded like he was blaming her for everything. You know, like she's the reason we broke up." Jordan's eyes met Mr. Thompson's, silently pleading for some kind of support. Instead, the older man looked weary. "It's complicated," Mr. Thompson said. "Pike's carrying a lot of guilt himself." That hit Jordan hard. Pike? Guilt? She hadn't realized just how tangled things were beneath the surface. Nate's face softened slightly, but his frustration remained. "I'm not trying to fight, but this feels like crossing a line. Jordan, I hope you know what you're doing." Jordan nodded. "I do, and I'm trying to be respectful. But honestly, Nate, I don't want to get caught in your conflict with Pike. I'm just trying to rebuild my life." Nate looked away, taking a deep breath. "Maybe I overreacted." Before Jordan could say anything else, Pike appeared in the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but tension rippled through the small group. "I see you've met," Pike said quietly. Nate's jaw clenched. "Yeah, I just got here." Pike's gaze shifted between them. "Look, I know this is awkward. I don't want any bad blood, but I'm sorry if I've made things difficult." Jordan's heart softened. She'd seen Pike struggle with his own emotions since the breakup. His guilt, his regret. It was real, and it complicated everything. Nate nodded. "Me too." Mr. Thompson smiled gently. "Maybe this is the first step toward healing." The group stood in uneasy silence for a moment, the weight of the past pressing down, but also the faintest hope that they could find a way forward. Jordan realized that living with Pike's dad was more than just a roof over her head. It was a crossroads where old wounds and new beginnings collided. Pike had always known Jordan as the child she was, a lively, bright-eyed girl with a laugh that could fill any room and a curiosity that knew no bounds. Years had passed, but in his mind, she remained frozen in that youthful image. That was how he protected himself, how he kept their relationship simple and safe. Until now. Something shifted inside him. A quiet tremor at first, barely noticeable. Then it grew, insistent and overwhelming. The way Jordan moved, the way her voice had deepened, the subtle curves of her figure. All these things clawed at Pike's carefully guarded perception. She was no longer just a child. She was becoming a woman. And suddenly, he was seeing her differently. It was like looking through a new lens that distorted everything he thought he knew. The moment hit him in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. They were talking, laughing as they always did, when his gaze landed on the curve of her neck, the soft shadow beneath her jawline. Something electric sparked inside him, confusing, unfamiliar, and deeply unsettling. Guilt rose in his chest like a wave, crashing over him with relentless force. How could he think like this? She was Jordan, his responsibility, his friend's daughter, the girl he had watched grow up. Hesitation gripped him tightly. He wanted to push these feelings away, to bury them where they couldn't hurt anyone. Yet desire tugged at him with equal strength, an insidious whisper that refused to be silenced. It was a war inside him, a battle between what was right and what his heart suddenly wanted. Pike clenched his fists, trying to steady his racing thoughts, but the conflict only deepened. He thought about Jordan's innocence, the trust she had always placed in him, the way she had confided her dreams and fears without reservation. How could he betray that? How could he look at her as anything other than the child she once was? Yet the truth was undeniable. His feelings were changing, evolving into something he neither wanted nor understood. Pike's nights grew restless. He lay awake, haunted by memories and fantasies he didn't want to admit to himself. The line between protector and something more blurred, threatening to crumble under the weight of his forbidden emotions. Each time he saw Jordan, the struggle renewed. Guilt gnawing at his conscience, hesitation freezing his actions, and desire burning beneath the surface. He asked himself endless questions. Was this attraction real, or just a cruel trick of his mind? Could he control it, suppress it, or was it destined to grow until it consumed him? The answers eluded him, leaving only a tangled mess of confusion and shame. At the same time, Pike knew one thing for certain. He had to protect Jordan from harm, from himself, from anything that might shatter the fragile trust between them. He vowed to never act on these feelings, no matter how difficult it became. The risk was too great, the consequences unimaginable. But the pain of denial was sharp and unyielding. Pike felt trapped in a cage of his own making, torn between duty and desire, loyalty and longing. The weight of his secret was a heavy burden, pressing down on him with relentless intensity. In the quiet moments, when the world slipped away and only his thoughts remained, Pike faced his deepest fear, that he might lose himself in this struggle, that his internal war could destroy everything he held dear. Yet he also recognized a fragile hope, that through this pain, he might find clarity, strength, and the courage to do what was right. For now, Pike's battle raged on, a silent war waged in the shadows of his heart. And as he grappled with the impossible, he clung to one unwavering truth. Jordan would always come first, no matter what. Jordan sat quietly in the dim corner of the cafe, her gaze drifting toward Pike without really seeing him. For weeks now, She'd felt this odd stirring inside her chest, a mix of warmth and hesitation, curiosity and doubt. It wasn't like the fluttering she used to get when she liked someone before. This was different, heavier, more complicated. She wondered if what she felt was real, or just a refuge from the loneliness that had wrapped around her like a thick fog. Pike had become a constant in her life, a steady presence amid the chaos that churned inside her. His rough voice, his awkward jokes, the way his eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite name, had all seeped under her skin. But was it love? Or just comfort? Jordan's mind spun as she replayed the moments they'd shared, the quiet dinners, the long walks when words seemed unnecessary, the way Pike would sometimes catch her looking and smile softly, as if trying to say, "I'm here." She saw the cracks behind his tough exterior, the hidden battles she guessed he fought every day. It was impossible not to notice the pain lurking behind Pike's eyes. That pain was like a silent beacon, drawing her in, making her want to reach out and help, even if she wasn't sure how. There was a weight in his gaze that unsettled her, a deep ache that made her heart ache in response. Jordan wasn't used to feeling so vulnerable. She was the one who usually held things together, who kept her emotions locked away behind careful walls. But with Pike, those walls felt fragile, ready to crumble with a single touch or word. She shook her head, trying to clear the fog of confusion. Maybe she was just scared. Scared to admit that she needed someone else. Scared to believe in something real after so many disappointments. Maybe it was easier to pretend this was just a phase, a fleeting comfort to dull the ache of being alone. But every time Pike smiled at her, soft and genuine, it chipped away at that defense. Every time he let his guard down, showing her a glimpse of the man beneath the surface, she felt something stir deeper inside her. Something tentative but undeniable. Jordan remembered the night they sat together after a long day, silence stretching between them. Pike had suddenly reached out, his hand brushing against hers. The shock of that simple contact sent a shiver through her. She hadn't pulled away.